Hi, Erik Linask here at Cloud Expo in New York. We're talking this morning with Leeward Security's Terry Woloszyn. Terry, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So security, certainly always a topic of interest when we're talking about the cloud. Has the situation around security in the cloud changed in the past year?
That's an excellent question, actually. I think security awareness has certainly come up across all jurisdictions and across all cloud types and across all types of users, especially with the most recent announcements and understanding now that people are watching. You take a look at the NSA announcements and leaks around the PRISM program and whatnot, and you discover quickly that everything you're putting in the cloud, frankly, is being watched and monitored by somebody, whether you know it or not. And for certain jurisdictions, that can actually be illegal. So security awareness of the information, I think now is finally on the rise. And from a business perspective, it means also compliance awareness. Using some of the social collaboration tools now all of a sudden might be against the law.
Very, very true. Now, does transparency, you mentioned the NSA and the PRISM program, does transparency around what's happening and what's been requested by the government entities play a role? How much of an impact does it have?
You have to be fair to the government agencies trying to do their job. I mean, the more transparency you have, the easier it is for the bad guys then to circumvent it. And so if you look at the slides behind me, we're running, for example, just talking about your everyday pedestrian attacks, they've gone from going after individuals to going after the service providers and cloud providers and whatnot directly, because now they can hack in bulk. I can now take a password file containing hundreds, thousands, millions, tens of millions of users' information and take that away and hack at that, and instead of getting an individual's identity, I can get millions of individuals' identity. So you've got to give, and answer your question, you've got to give the government credit in trying to protect us, and offering more transparency into the process actually just does everybody a disservice in that regard. So there's a balancing act that needs to occur. I think from a personal perspective too, though, focusing on the day-to-day security is even more important than focusing on who's watching. That's the information security in one respect, but more importantly, your own personal information and identity security is even more important. You look at Matt Hannon from Wired, for example, last December, had his entire digital life erased in an hour because of one password being compromised. Right here in New York, you saw that $45 million was taken from ATMs because, again, the masterminds had paid some hackers to crack into a database, allowing them to mint these ATM cards. So you look at that day-to-day hacking and attacking and security, and people need to be cognizant of that and need to take appropriate steps to protect themselves.
So how are you helping them do that?
Well, one of the things we're introducing this year is the MSC security server. One, as I said, of the pedestrian security aspects that people need to be cognizant of is passwords. And it's the bane of everyone's existence. And what we're discovering, and what a lot of researchers have discovered over the years, is that people are reusing the same simple passwords. Even though the best practice says it should be a random number of strings and characters and symbols and numbers, and at least 14 or 18 or 25 characters long. There's cloud applications that allow 16,000 characters for a password. Now you can imagine sitting there for 2 days. I don't know about you, but I make a lot of typing mistakes. I'd never get through my password to log in. So one of the things that the MSC security server is doing and will be offering is the ability to eliminate the password. Let's actually work more consistently with the way we think, and that's visually. So what the MSC security server will allow people to do is log in graphically. So that instead of trying to remember this awfully long, complicated string of characters for every one of the passwords that you have, and people on average now have 25. I personally manage 200 passwords. They're not the same, and they're all random strings. The way we do that is we front end all those systems with graphical images, my own personal graphical images. So there's no point in you trying to take my pictures or look over my shoulder and see Terry took the kids to the beach to go swimming and snorkeling. 5 pictures that I made into a story to remember the sequence. That does you no good. I could publish that on a billboard on the highway. Doesn't matter because you don't have access to my symbols, my pictures as my password. But that then gets converted by our server, for example, into 16,000 randomly generated character string for resources on the cloud. So that's the kind of thing that the security service is going to do, is widen that aperture to allow everyone from 4-year-olds to 100-year-olds be more secure online just by simply protecting their passwords. And then from a business perspective, taking it the next step further by saying, let's actually make password management easier as well. Because you, for example, could now remember the same story. I took my kids to the beach to see the dolphins. But your administrator for the applications now can regularly change the underlying complex strings of passwords to these resources on a regular best practice basis. And you don't have to change your story that represents it up front. So that's where we're starting, and then from there getting back into protecting the sensitive information as well, so that the identity theft as well as any concerns about people eavesdropping or accessing the information can be quelled. And then finally, defending against attacks, both personally as well as at a business level, going and assisting the organizations and individuals to protect their online presence from attackers going after, as we saw, and are seeing constantly the password files and whatnot. So long-winded answer to your question, Eric, but that's what we're doing with the MSC security server, standing at that intersection of mobile, social, and cloud to help people be more secure.
How much thinking still persists out there that along the lines of, well, I'm not Google, I'm not Sony, I don't really have to worry about it?
I think that's an absolute fallacy. Everybody who is maintaining any sort of personal information is a target. It's that simple. You are a target. If only, as we saw in some of the more recent hacking cases, as part of a longer chain in the attack vector. I'm going to grab some information from you in order to turn around and reuse it over here. So while your company may be maintaining, say, a login for users, but you're not holding any credit card information, you're not holding any personal information. The reality is, the psychology of passwords today is people will reuse the same password over and over. I've been guilty of that. I'm sure a lot of people on this floor have been guilty of that. Microsoft did a study that saw basically people were reusing the same 6 passwords over an average of 25 applications. So everyone who maintains a login credential, as it were, is a target, if only to then grab that password and use it against the other targets that do contain password information or personal information or credit card information or whatever the case may be to help steal the identity theft and whatnot. So everybody who's maintaining information of any sort is a target, like I said, if only to be part of a larger chain.
Excellent. Terry, thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
I'm Erik Linask with TMC. Follow all of our coverage of Cloud Expo in the TMC Video Newsroom.